Have you ever felt, stuck? Maybe repeating the same patterns or just looking for easy answers when things get complex and finding they just don't cut it.
Hmm.
What if the root of so many of our personal struggles, maybe even global conflicts, isn't really a lack of solutions, but more a reluctance to actually think?
That's a powerful starting point.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really plunging into the insights of M. Scott Peck, especially from his really groundbreaking work, The Road Less Traveled and Beyond.
A book that certainly made waves.
Absolutely. It's challenged, maybe even provoked millions. And our mission today is to unpack how embracing complexity, really cultivating deep self-awareness, and taking genuine personal responsibility can lead to a much deeper kind of growth.
Moving beyond that simplistic thinking trap.
Exactly, getting away from the easy answers. And our sources for this deep dive, they come directly from Peck's own notes, his writings, excerpts from his books.
Straight from the source. Good.
So Peck kicks things off with this bold, almost provocative claim. He says, simplistic thinking, or sometimes just the outright failure to think at all, is the fundamental problem. The root cause behind so much individual and even societal sickness.
A strong statement.
He points to these really stark examples, right? Like the relentless violence in places like Ireland, the Middle East, Somalia, Sri Lanka, where prejudice and fear just explode.
Yeah, fueled by these rigid
But
ideologies.
it's even closer to home, things like institutionalized racism in America, the divisions rich versus poor, black versus white, pro-life versus pro-choice, straight versus gay. He argues these are conflicts often driven by rationalizations, not really rational thought.
That's right. And Peck doesn't just state the problem, he really pushes us to ask why.
Mm.
Why do we avoid thinking more deeply?
Okay.
He pulls from Leonard Hodgson, talking about our combined original sins. That's his term of laziness, fear, and pride.
Laziness, fear, and pride.
And these
Okay.
aren't just minor flaws. He sees them as fundamental limitations holding us back from our human potential.
So how do we fix it?
Well, the remedy isn't to ditch reason. It's actually the opposite.
Yeah.
It's to educate our reason to be its true self, to
Yeah.
unlock its full power. It's not just about knowing more stuff, but actively refining how we think, pushing past those mental shortcuts.
Right. And this next point he makes is, wow, it's incredibly challenging. He talks about this pervasive lie in society,
Uh-huh.
one that he says is pushed by business, media, even some religious institutions.
Yeah.
This idea that we're here simply to be happy, fulfilled, and comfortable all the time. He practically calls it wicked.
Yeah, and his counter is so powerful, it flips that completely. Peck argues our finest moments, our most transformative ones, often happen precisely when we're uncomfortable.
Where we're struggling.
Exactly, when we're searching. And that societal lie
Yeah.
plays right into our nature, specifically that sin of laziness he mentioned.
Ah, okay.
So lots of people just opt out of thinking things through. They buy into simple assumptions, stereotypes, just to fit in, keep up with the Joneses.
He gives examples, right?
Oh yeah, really relatable ones. Like Sally, who feels the pressure and marries the next man who comes along without really thinking it through and then regrets it.
Mm.
Or Bill, middle-aged, downsized, looking back and deeply regretting not pursuing nursing years ago because he bought into that whole company man image.
The price of not thinking it through is regret.
Profound regret, yeah. Unlived potential. That's the cost of conforming to those negative norms as Peck sees it.
Okay, so if thinking is so vital, let's unpack this a bit. What's the fundamental purpose of our, relatively large brain? How does it actually enable this deeper thought Peck is talking about?
Right, but Peck breaks it down pretty clearly. You've got the old brain, sometimes called the reptilian brain, that handles the basics, unconscious stuff like breathing, heart rate.
Okay, the automatic function.
Exactly. Then there's the midbrain. It's bigger, more complex. It governs and produces our emotions. Neurosurgeons can actually trigger specific emotions by stimulating spots there.
Wow.
But the newest part, the most distinctively human part, is the new brain. Especially the frontal lobes. That's where the primary thinking happens. Judgment. Decision-making.
Our thinking cap, basically.
That's a good way to put it. It's the area that's grown the most during human evolution.
So the frontal lobes are key for thinking. How does that connect to our ability to learn and to grow in the way Peck describes? Is it just about absorbing facts?
Oh, it's definitely deeper than that. Learning and thinking are, well, they're intertwined. And a huge factor for humans is our long childhood dependency.
Right, we take a long time to become independent.
And that time is crucial for learning. He talks about two kinds. There's passive learning, like picking up language, or understanding what he calls ego boundaries.
There's go boundaries.
Yeah, that fundamental, often unconscious sense that this is me, This arm is mine. It's separate from the blanket or the person holding me. Sounds simple, but it's a massive step in self-awareness.
Okay, that makes sense. And the other kind.
That's active learning. And here he brings up the terrible twos.
Ah, yes. Every parent's favorite stage.
He frames it as painful, sure, but vital. The child, who thought they were the center of the universe, gets, in his words, psychologically demoted from a 4-star general to a private.
Ouch. That's quite a reframe.
It is. But despite the tantrums, this demotion lays the foundation for what Eric Fromm called socialization learning, as Peck puts it, to do what you have to do.
Learning the rules, basically.
And learning self-discipline. Parental role models are obviously key here for discipline, but also emotional intelligence. Peck warns that if adults shut down a child's feelings, it can lead to emotional numbness later, stifling that early emotional learning.
That demotion idea really highlights how early the self-awareness journey starts. So, what about us as adults? Does the learning just stop, or is it ongoing?
Oh, absolutely not. Peck is really strong on this. Active learning in adulthood isn't just possible, it's infinitely desirable. He even suggests the biggest leaps in growth often happen in the latter 75% of life.
Really? Later in life?
Yeah, allowing us to, as he quotes someone, cure all of the follies, prejudices, and false opinions he has contracted in the former part. It's a continuous process.
Okay.
He also brings in split brain research.
Yeah.
The left side being more analytical, deductive, the right more intuitive, inductive.
Brain, left brain. Yes.
And Peck champions what he calls androgynous thinking, using both sides, integrating the concrete and the abstract.
How does that work in practice?
He uses this great analogy from the ancient Sumerians. Apparently, they'd make important decisions twice, once drunk, once sober.
Seriously,
That
drunk
was- yeah.
and sober.
Yeah. The idea being they were forced to engage different modes of thought, the rational and perhaps the more intuitive or emotional, before committing. It's about integrating, not choosing one over the other, continually stretching our mental capacities.
Okay, we've touched on how not thinking well can lead to personal regrets, like with Sally or Bill. But Peck takes it further, right? He argues this resistance can actually show up as specific psychological disorders.
He does. It's another bold claim.
Yeah.
He strongly believes that all psychiatric disorders are thinking disorders.
All of them.
That's his conviction. He gives examples. Narcissists, he says, literally cannot think about other people. Their thinking is completely self-centered.
Right.
Obsessive compulsives, they cannot think about the big picture. They're stuck on the details. Passive dependent people, they cannot think for themselves.
So the limitation is the thinking process itself.
Exactly. And he draws that distinction between neurosis, where someone takes on too much responsibility, blames themselves, and character disorder, where they blame the world.
And one is easier to treat?
Generally, the neurotic, yeah,
Yeah.
because they see a problem within themselves. The character disordered person thinks the problem is always external.
Right.
And he uses that powerful Carl Jung quote, neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering.
Wow. A substitute for legitimate suffering. That really lands hard. It implies we create extra pain by avoiding the necessary pain of growth.
Precisely. Peck really leans into that. We construct these elaborate defenses, these neuroses, to avoid the discomfort that actually leads to growth.
So beyond avoiding pain, what other consequences does Peck highlight when we just consistently opt out of thinking?
Well, there's that story he tells about the patient, the one who took the long way to his office for years.
Oh, right. The shortcut story.
Yeah, for 2 years. Wasted, 3 full days of his life, drove thousands of extra miles. Why? Ultimately, Peck says he was lying to protect his neurosis.
He's lying to himself, essentially.
Yes, avoiding the tiny, legitimate suffering or effort of trying a new route led to this huge, unnecessary waste of time and energy. The core consequence Peck wants us to see is that avoiding legitimate suffering actively stops growth. It's a choice with a real cost.
So if growth involves facing some discomfort, how do we get better at managing that? How do we develop competence in handling our internal world, our emotions and thoughts?
Peck talks about developing a transcendent ego.
Transcendent ego, what does that mean?
It's not about repressing emotions. It's about being so aware of them that you can orchestrate them, like a conductor.
Okay, orchestrate.
Yeah, like the conductor says, okay, sadness, violins, quiet now, time for joy, horns, let's hear it. It's about conscious direction, not suppression.
So actively choosing the emotional response.
Or at least consciously managing its expression. He tells that story about the new university president during student riots. He listened calmly for weeks while things were chaotic. Then, in a faculty meeting, At just the right moment, he apparently utterly blasted an arrogant young professor who was undermining things.
Wow, calculated anger.
Exactly. It wasn't losing control. It was a controlled, strategic use of anger. That, for Peck, signals real psychological competence, not being emotionless, but mastering emotional expression.
It's clear, though, that gaining this kind of consciousness, this self-awareness, isn't always easy. It can come with its own pain.
It definitely can. Peck talks about the pain of being gifted. He uses an example of a brilliant student, Jane, who was constantly irritable. Because deep down, she couldn't accept her own intelligence and the sort of loneliness that came with feeling different, superior even.
That's a different kind of pain.
And there's also the loneliness of transcending traditional culture. You know, for people who dare to think for themselves, who question the norms, the societal illusions of normalcy.
Standing apart from the herd.
It can be isolating, yeah, but it's necessary to break free. And finally, he talks about aging.
Aging as painful.
As a kind of stripping away. Physical abilities decline, illusions fade, comforts lessen. But he argues this can be a powerful stimulus for spiritual growth, if you face it directly, instead of denying it.
So growth often involves leaning into discomfort.
That seems to be a central theme, yes.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. We've talked a lot about the individual. Peck also applies these ideas to our place within, well, organizations. He uses that term broadly, right? From marriages up to global society.
Absolutely. And for him, interdependence within these structures isn't weakness or pathological dependency. It's actually a sign of maturity, recognizing we rely on each other.
How does that play out in, say, a marriage?
He uses his own marriage to Lily as a great example. They're very different. He describes her as having a flowing nature, while he was all about organization.
Oil and water, maybe?
Initially, it caused friction, yeah. But over time, they learned to see these differences not as problems, but as gifts. Each brought something the other lacked, leading to a greater wholeness together.
Learning from each other's strengths.
Exactly. And this leads to what he calls the advanced course of marriage, which is basically the golden rule, but with a crucial twist.
Okay.
It's do unto others as you would have them do unto you if you were in their particular unique and different shoes.
Wow. That requires real empathy. Not just assuming they want what you would want.
Precisely. Stepping completely into their reality. That's
Yeah.
the challenge.
Yeah. That's a huge challenge. So what about bigger organizations, businesses, governments? Do they have similar thinking problems?
Oh, definitely. He introduces a really interesting idea, the hole in the mind.
A hole in the mind.
Think of it like organizational tunnel vision. It's our tendency to only see our own little part of the system, the assembly line, the sales desk, whatever our job is, and miss the bigger picture.
We think our part is the most important.
Often, yeah. Fueled by a kind of organizational narcissism. The assembly worker thinks they're the core, the salesperson thinks they are, management thinks they are. This hole stops the whole system working well and causes friction.
So given these holes, what does that mean for leadership? How do you guide a group effectively?
Well, Peck shares a really humbling story from his time as director of psychiatry in Okinawa.
Yeah.
He started out trying to be Mr. Nice Guy. Avoided structure, aimed for consensus on everything.
And how did that work out?
Terribly. Morale actually dropped. People started bickering over petty things.
Interesting. So less structure wasn't better.
No. He learned that employees often suffer from a lack of structure. Effective leadership sometimes means providing that clarity, that framework, even if it makes you Mr. Not-So-Nice Guy initially.
Structure can be containing, reassuring.
Exactly. But he also stresses that great leaders don't lose their vulnerability, even when making tough calls like downsizing. And maybe most importantly, he says, the greatest power of a top executive isn't just setting policy.
What is it then?
It's determining the spirit of the organization, the culture, the way people think and behave. That's the real power.
That's a huge responsibility. Okay, let's zoom out even further to society as a whole. How do these ideas apply to us as citizens, especially when we grapple with big issues like good and evil?
Peck tackles that paradox of good and evil directly. He links societal evil back to those individual sins, laziness, fear, pride, but also to a lack of consciousness and this institutionalized compartmentalization.
Compartmentalization, like the hole in the mind.
Exactly, but on a larger scale.
Right.
He talks about walking through the Pentagon during the Vietnam War. Everyone was busy with their specific tasks, logistics, intelligence, whatever, but seemingly no one felt responsible for the war itself.
Everyone's responsible, so no one is responsible.
That's the danger. This fragmentation of conscience can make institutions act in ways that are, well, evil, because responsibility gets diffused, but he's not totally pessimistic.
Okay, good.
He also points to real positive changes in society. The evolution of human rights, for example. The fact that we have organizations monitoring governments. The very idea of war crimes tribunals.
Things we didn't have centuries ago.
Right. Even the fact that we debate whether a war is just shows progress. It means our collective consciousness is expanding, however slowly.
That offers some hope. So bringing it back to the individual listener, what does this all mean for you, trying to navigate daily life with all this complexity?
Peck introduces a fascinating idea here. Smart selfishness.
Smart selfishness sounds contradictory.
It does, but it's not about being greedy or self-centered. It's about choosing to engage with constructive pain, rather than trying to avoid all suffering.
Okay, explain that.
Think about existential anxiety, that nagging feeling.
Yeah.
He says it's useful. It's what propels us to consult maps before a journey. We accept the small pain of planning to avoid the larger pain of getting lost.
So embracing necessary discomfort for a better outcome.
Precisely. And he highlights the paradox of human nature, our amazing ability to change things that seem natural, like a toddler learning toilet training. It's not instinctual. They learn it, often out of love or desire for approval.
We can override our base impulses through conscious effort.
We have a profound capacity for transformation. So the takeaway is practical. Adopt a think globally, act locally mindset. He uses Rosa Parks as an example.
So.
Her simple individual act of defiance, choosing that moment of discomfort and risk, triggered massive societal change. Individual action matters.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground on the psychological side, the organizational side. But Peck doesn't stop there, does he? He pushes into the spiritual dimension.
He really does. He talks about the other side of complexity, suggesting that, in the end, all things point to God.
That's a big leap for some. How does he approach it?
He talks about the science of God. He notes that even scientific giants, people like Carl Jung, Albert Einstein, through their own deep inquiries, came to believe God is real, even though science can't exactly measure the divine.
So, acknowledging limits to scientific measurement.
And embracing paradox.
Yeah.
Reality itself, he says, often holds contradictory truths simultaneously. He then distinguishes between sacred consciousness, finding meaning through a relationship with God, however one conceives that, and secular consciousness.
What's the difference there?
Secular consciousness, even if highly intelligent, can be prone to meaninglessness because it tends to place the self, the individual ego, at the very center of the universe. Sacred consciousness finds meaning in connection to something larger.
That's a really interesting distinction. And he also makes a clear difference between spirituality and religion, doesn't he? Which I think is helpful for a lot of people.
Absolutely. It's crucial for understanding his framework.
Yeah.
For Peck, religion is the organized body of beliefs, specific creed, membership rules.
The institution.
Right. Spirituality, though, is much broader. He uses William James's idea.
Yeah.
It's the attempt to be in harmony with an unseen order of things.
A more personal journey.
Yes. And he outlines 4 stages of spiritual growth. Stage 1 is chaotic antisocial. Stage 2 is formal institutional, where he'd place most religious fundamentalists attached to the rules and structures.
Okay.
Stage 3 is skeptic individual, where many thoughtful secularists or agnostics might be, questioning the rules. And stage 4 is mystical communal, seeing the interconnectedness.
And it's developmental.
Yes, that's key. Someone can be a secularist in stage 3 and actually be more spiritually developed, in his view, than a fundamentalist stuck in stage 2. It's not about the label, but the journey of connection and understanding.
He uses a metaphor for that journey, right? Israel.
Yeah, meaning one who struggles with God. He sees that as representing all of humanity in our ongoing wrestling with the big questions, with the divine.
And one of the key tools for navigating this complexity, this struggle, is what he calls the holy conjunction.
Ah, yes, the simple word and.
In a world that loves either, he pushes for both hand. Logic and intuition, facts and mystery.
Exactly. It's about integration, wholeness, resisting false dichotomies. This both-hand thinking opens up so much more possibility.
How does this connect to concepts like grace or revelation?
He describes grace almost like serendipity, a pattern of highly improbable events with a beneficial outcome. It's happening all the time, he thinks, but we often miss it because we expect dramatic miracles.
We don't recognize the subtle patterns.
Right, and divine revelation might come through that still small voice. He gives personal examples, a friend feeling an urge to run, his own sense he needed to read the book of Daniel, which unexpectedly helped him.
Or through dreams.
Yes, big dreams too.
Mm.
But discernment is crucial. He suggests reality testing the insight, making sure it's constructive, and often noticing a slightly crazy or alien quality, something that feels like it comes from beyond your own usual thinking patterns.
Interesting. So how do the ego and the soul fit into this spiritual path?
Okay, so he defines the soul as this unique, developable, immortal spirit, created and nurtured by God. It's distinct from the ego.
And the ego is?
The ego is more our surface personality, our self-image, our conscious will, the part that likes to be in control.
Okay.
The spiritual journey, for Peck, involves kenosis.
Kenosis.
It's a Greek word meaning self-emptying. It's the often painful process of letting go of the ego's dominance, its need for control, to allow the deeper soul to emerge, becoming an empty vessel so it can be filled with something larger, like God's spirit.
Emptying the ego to make space for the soul.
That's the idea. And interestingly, he applies this not just to individuals, but to groups too.
How does kenosis work for a group?
Think of a team or organization that fails badly. That feeling of emptiness, of hitting bottom, that's the critical stage. It's where the unlearning happens, shedding old assumptions, facing the failure. That painful emptying makes renewal possible.
So failure can actually be a path to growth if embraced.
If the emptiness is allowed, yes. And finally, he ties prayer and thinking together in a really profound way.
How so?
He sees prayer not just as asking for things, but as a radical response to the mysteries of life. Often for him, it's wordless contemplation. It's thinking with God in mind.
Thinking with God in mind.
Yeah. He quotes that old Christian motto, lex orandi, lex credendi.
Which means?
The rule of prayer precedes the rule of faith. The implication is, if you want to grow in faith or understanding, you must first engage in prayer in that contemplation.
The practice comes before the belief hardens.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Maybe the ultimate expression of this is facing death. He frames dying as the final, greatest opportunity for learning and growth, by choosing to die gracefully, which means giving up that ego control, that illusion of power, and placing one's soul consciously in the hands of the real power. It's the ultimate kenosis, the ultimate surrender and trust.
Wow. What a profound journey we've really been on today. From tackling simplistic thinking all the way to the mysteries of the soul and God. M. Scott Peck really guides us to see that embracing complexity, even accepting pain and uncertainty, these aren't roadblocks.
No, they're the path itself.
They're the very pathways to genuine competence, to wholeness, and ultimately to a much deeper sense of meaning in life.
Absolutely. His work is a powerful reminder that life is this ongoing process. Learning, unlearning, and the struggle, the wrestling with it all, with its paradoxes. That's really the point, isn't it?
It really seems to be. It's where the growth happens.
It's where we truly come alive.
And as M. Scott Peck himself memorably put it, once a mind is truly stretched, it never returns to its former dimensions. So the challenge for you, our listener, is perhaps to consider, how can you continue to stretch your own mind? How can you embrace more of the paradoxical truths of life? And maybe, just maybe, in doing so, discover, as Peck suggests, that it is you who are the name of the game.